The 6th of June, 1944. Under the code name Operation Overlord, US, British, and Canadian troops crossed the English Channel and began landing on the beaches of Normandy in France. This operation will become known as D-Day and is the largest amphibious invasion in history, deploying more than 160,000 Allied troops on air, land, and sea. 50,000 vehicles, some 5,000 naval craft, and more than 11,500 aircraft support the initial invasion. This largest seaborne invasion in history becomes one of the main turning points of World War II, and by the end of June, more than 850,000 troops will come ashore on the beaches of Normandy. On the 16th of December, 1944, the German military launches the Battle of the Bulge, also known as the Ardennes Offensive, which is the last major German military offensive campaign in Western Europe. Hitler hopes that the German counterattack will surround British and American armies and will stall the Allied offensive against Germany. However, the German offensive in the Ardennes region of Belgium is only temporarily successful in halting the Allied advance, and despite taking dreadful losses, US forces managed to delay the enemy sufficiently to permit reinforcements to be moved into position to halt the German drive. Because Hitler, out of desperation, orders that no quarter is to be granted, which means that combatants will not be taken prisoner but killed, German Waffen-SS soldiers commit a number of massacres in Belgium. Some of these soldiers, however, will pay for these crimes with their own lives. On the 17th of December, 1944, the 1st SS Panzer Division, commanded by Joachim Peiper, was heading west from Birmingham, Belgium. This movement was part of the general German advance during the Battle of the Bulge. At the same time, a US convoy of 30 vehicles and nearly 140 men of the 285th Field Artillery Observation Battalion was headed south from Hürtgen Forest towards Ligneville. The two forces converged just before noon at the crossroads hamlet of Baugnes, 4 kilometers south of Malmedy. SS soldiers immediately began firing upon the US troops, who panicked. Those who did not escape, including medical personnel, quickly surrendered. After being searched and relieved of their personal possessions, the US soldiers were lined up in 8 rows in a field at the crossroads. Survivors of the atrocity recall that a group of approximately 120 US prisoners of war stood in the farmer's field when the SS soldiers fired machine guns at the grouped Americans. Panicked by the machine gun fire, some prisoners ran and fled the field, but the SS soldiers shot and killed most of the grouped men where they stood. Some prisoners dropped to the ground and pretended to be dead. Nonetheless, after the initial machine gunning, the SS soldiers walked amongst the lying corpses, searching for wounded survivors to finish them with a shot to the head. Moreover, some of the American soldiers who fled the farmer's field had run to and hidden in the cafe at the Baugnes crossroads, but the SS soldiers set the cafe afire and killed every US soldier who escaped the burning building. When the Germans left the site, at least 84 US soldiers were dead. Just over 40 Americans survived the incident, known as the Malmedy Massacre, either by fleeing into the woods or pretending to be dead. Other murders of prisoners of war and civilians were reported on the 17th, 18th, 19th, and 20th of December. The SS group was eventually declared responsible for the deaths of some 350 unarmed American soldiers and about 100 Belgian civilians. When news of the killing spread among American forces, it aroused great anger among frontline troops. One American unit even issued orders that no SS troops or paratroopers will be taken prisoner but will be shot on sight. The time for revenge came on the 1st of January, 1945, when the 11th Armored Division, an American combat unit which had landed in France on the 16th of December 1944, massacred an estimated 80 German prisoners of war. Staff Sergeant John F. Ague, who was present during an action near Chenogne, described the killing of German prisoners by American troops, saying, "Some of the boys had prisoners line up. I knew they were going to shoot them, and I hated this business. They marched prisoners back up to the hill to murder them with the rest of the prisoners we had secured that morning. As we were going up the hill out of town, I know some of our boys were lining up German prisoners in the fields on both sides of the road. There must have been 25 or 30 German boys in each group. Machine guns were being set up. These boys were to be machine gunned and murdered. We were committing the same crimes we were now accusing the Japs and Germans of doing. Going back down the road into town, I looked into the fields where the German boys had been shot. Dark, lifeless forms lay in the snow. The 11th Armored Division was disbanded in August 1945. Supreme Commander of the Allied Expeditionary Force, General Dwight D. Eisenhower, demanded a full investigation, but the 11th Armored Division were uncooperative, saying, "It's too late, the war is over, the units are disbanded." In the end, Eisenhower never obtained an investigation into those killings in Chenogne. The official post-war history published by the United States government states that while it is probable that Germans who attempted to surrender in the days immediately after the 17th ran a greater risk of being killed than earlier in the year, there is no evidence that American troops took advantage of orders, implicit or explicit, to kill their SS prisoners. None of the perpetrators of the Chenogne Massacre were ever punished. However, the Nazi Waffen-SS soldiers who were involved in the Malmedy massacre did face justice. The trial of 74 SS members who had taken part in the Malmedy massacre and other killings during the Battle of the Bulge began on the 16th of May, 1946. All of the defendants were charged with violation of the laws and usages of war, and with deliberately participating in the killing, shooting, and torturing of US soldiers and unarmed civilians. The prosecution argued that the defendants committed these war crimes as part of a premeditated Nazi conspiracy to wage a ruthless campaign against Allied forces and civilians during the German military offensive of December 1944. This policy of killing prisoners of war, it was charged, had been ordered by Hitler and willingly executed by Joachim Peiper. The defense counsel did not dispute the fact that the US Army soldiers had been killed, but argued that the shootings had occurred in the heat of battle, not as a result of a criminal conspiracy. On the 16th of July, 1946, the military tribunal found all defendants guilty, and 43, including Joachim Peiper, were sentenced to death by hanging, and 23 were sentenced to life in prison, with the rest receiving either 10, 15, or 20-year prison terms. In the end, however, no one was executed, and by 1956, all of the convicted had been freed from prison. The reason was that during the course of the proceedings, Peiper claimed that the American war crimes investigators had beaten the defendants, coerced them into signing confessions, given them mock trials, and intimidated their families. These accusations, which became the subject of heated dispute, haunted the trial. The chief American defense counsel, Colonel Willis M. Everett, appealed to the U.S. Supreme Court, as well as other bodies, to have executions halted, and the matter of fraudulently acquired confessions and other legal improprieties to be thoroughly investigated. News of the defense claims leaked out of the press and generated criticism of American war crimes trial procedures, both in the United States and in Germany. Leading German clerics, including some who had been imprisoned by the Nazis in concentration camps, condemned the Malmedy proceedings. The United States Congress also launched investigations into the claims raised by the defense team, but the findings largely exonerated the American authorities in Germany. Under popular pressure in the midst of the Cold War between the Western powers and the Soviet Union, all the sentences of the Malmedy defendants were commuted, including those sentenced to death. In the end, however, Joachim Peiper had to pay for his crimes. In 1972, Peiper and his wife Sigurd moved to Trave in eastern France, where he owned a house. In 1976, his presence in France attracted journalists, to whom Peiper readily gave interviews, wherein he claimed he was a victim of communist harassment due to his role in the war. He claimed that he had paid for his war crimes with 12 years of prison, and said, "In 1940, French people weren't brave. That's why I'm here." These insulting remarks angered the press as well as residents, and 1 month later, on the 14th of July 1976, a group of French anti-Nazis, calling itself the Avengers, attacked his house and set it on fire. Joachim Peiper, then 61 years old, was burnt alive. Due to the intense heat generated by the fire, Peiper's body had shrunk to a length of about 60 centimeters and was barely recognizable as that of a human being. When his neighbor saw the body, he said, "It is him, but he is miniaturized." There were no tears shed for Nazi murderers. Thanks for watching the World History Channel. Be sure to like and subscribe, and click the bell notification icon so you don't miss our next episodes. We thank you, and we'll see you next time on the channel.